Welcome back to Unleashing You. Today, I speak with Brooke Page-Thompson, lover of life, laughter, and finding purpose. She's a partner at a boutique leadership consulting firm by day and a yogi mindfulness teacher by night. Having been in the HR and talent management world for the last 22 years, she's learned the ups and downs of navigating difficult clients, relationships, and expectations. Opening her yoga studio in Castle Rock, Colorado, just before the pandemic, and learning to lean into the ebbs and flows of life, she's found her passion in coaching and developing others to be their best self. Creating paths for other women needing someone to be their cheerleader and guide to just loving the heck out of life. She's a small business owner, partner, yoga teacher, and as we find out at the end of the episode, author. This conversation is filled with so many messages we all need to hear. So let's dive in. Before we begin, I want to make sure that you have the Unleashing You retreat on your radar, because just the fact that you're tuning into this podcast means the Unleashing You retreat is right up your alley. The reason I created the Unleashing You retreat is because as women, we tend to look to everyone else for the answers. We somehow think that everyone else knows better than we do, when in reality, tapping into your own intuition is actually the key to living a happy and fulfilled life. And that's how I've created the career and life I have now, and what we'll teach you how to do during this retreat. An inner shift like this will leave you with tools that you'll use for the rest of your life. This retreat is so much more than a girls' trip. This is a transformation. If I've piqued your interest, I want to personally invite you to join us in Steamboat Springs, Colorado on September 19th through the 22nd. During our time together, we will go through coaching workshops and other deep personal development activities that will uncover aspects of yourself you never even knew. Work like this would take months or years to do on your own, and we're going to get you there in just a few short days. Not to mention, we'll be staying in a gorgeous mountain home, complete with a private chef, so you don't have to lift a finger. If you are ready for a pampering getaway where you can recharge your batteries and feed your soul, send me a message on Instagram or visit acrprofessionalcoaching.com to learn more and reserve your spot. Spots are very limited, so do not wait. And I'll see you in the mountains. Now, let's get on to today's show. Welcome to Unleashing You. This podcast is your permission slip to create success your way. I'm your host, Amanda Riffey, a certified success coach and female business leader who has climbed her way up the corporate ladder. I've been through burnout and back and found the tools to bring fun and enjoyment to my career while creating powerful results and leading in a way that feels authentic to me. This show brings you conversations with women just like you who have created massive success for themselves and are doing it in their own way. We'll hear about their personal journeys of growing their career while still prioritizing the things they love most. If you are ready to be challenged and encouraged to reach your next level, then buckle up, sister, because the road to dreamy success begins here. Let's dive in. Hey, Brooke, welcome to Unleashing You. How are you?
I'm good, Amanda. How are you?
I am doing well. I am really excited to have you on the podcast today. I know when we met to prep for this conversation, I feel like we could have talked for hours and hours. So I'm sure that this episode is going to be a good one. You have so much knowledge to share that I think the women and the people listening to this are really going to take a lot away from your story. So let's dig right in. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? So your career path, your journey, the business you have today. Let's dig into all of it.
Yeah. So my path really started when I was younger. I grew up in a very religious home. And so my grandparents were missionaries, and I originally thought I was going to be a pastor's wife. And I was engaged in my early 20s, and for lots of reasons that didn't work out. And I decided I wasn't going to be dependent on a man for anything, which backfired later on, but I'll get back to that later. And so I went into corporate world. So I got my undergrad in elementary ed, and then I decided I didn't like kids that much to actually teach. So I went into corporate and did a HR and training role. And then I moved to Denver to run a hypo rotation program. And about 4 years later, I really loved the idea of travel and consulting. So I went in the consulting world for about 18 years. I'm still consulting today. I'm a partner at a consulting firm, but had lots of starts and stops along the way with part of the story that we'll talk about today of why I left certain jobs and how I got to the role I'm in now. And I also am the owner of a small yoga studio here in Castle Rock called Buka Yoga. And I love the synergies between the consulting work I get to do and the mindfulness I get to do at the studio, and how they've come together over time has been really cool to watch.
Yeah. And I think just probably somebody listening, they're like, oh my gosh, like, hold on, let me let me think about all the things that you have done so far. And so I love that you are a partner at a consulting firm. And then you're also a business owner, as you mentioned, of the yoga studio. I definitely want to dig into the yoga piece. But before we do that, one of the things that you and I have talked about before that I think many people can relate to, but maybe don't even realize, is that toxic work environment. So you've talked before about being, unfortunately, in some of those toxic work environments. And not only did that impact you in terms of like your mental health and your stress, but you were actually seeing physical signs of that almost manifesting in your body. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I love to tell this story because I was really grateful I had yoga for the second boss, because it was really what saved me in the end. But the first one was that I had a really big role at a large consulting firm, and I was based here in Denver. And my boss had decided that I was a direct reflection of him. And he actually told me that about 6 months onto the job, that I wasn't allowed to have an opinion that wasn't his. And every time I saw him, I was always to blame for something. It was never his issue. It was always my issue. He did start to take some personal things out when he would see me. He kind of reflected his life on me sometimes when he would come into work. And if they had fought the night before, he would just continue it with me when he got there. And it got to a point where he really didn't like some of the things I was proposing for culture change within the office and supporting some of our consultants. And it just got really bad. And at that job, I lost a lot of weight because I was so stressed out. And I had just started to find yoga. I was just kind of dabbling in meditation. I'd gone on my first yoga retreat. I'd realized there was something different about this concept of being in my body. And I could tell with him in particular, it was no longer my issue to solve. And I think that was the big lesson I learned at that job was you're surrounded by people all the time, and there's givers and there's takers, and the takers will take until they can't take anymore. And if you don't recognize it, all of your energy is depleted and it's completely gone. And I was there with him, and I knew there was no way, there was no coaching that could solve this. There was no making the relationship different or better. It was just, he was who he was and I was who I was, and the two would never find a path to meet. So I left that job and I did some independent consulting work for about 2.5 years. And then I went to a big global telecommunications company, and I hadn't dealt with the last boss in an appropriate way. I didn't recognize the emotional patterns that were there, the behavioral tendencies, my mindset, how it had played into some of this. And by then I'd finished my 200-hour teacher training and I had lots of tools at my resource. And I started this other job. And within 3 weeks, my relationship with her was exactly where I'd left my last boss. And I could recognize it in the moment of, wow, I've been here before. How did I get here so fast? And really starting to unpack that, it was a situation I couldn't change. And so I had to be very clear on how was I going to show up every day? Could I show up every day? How was I letting her impact my ability to do certain things? And it just got more and more toxic. She threw temper tantrums in offices. I had stuff thrown at me at one point, all over something as simple as a board presentation. And it was the little things that always tipped her off. And it always came back on me. So being an empath, I didn't know how to really push it away. And so I started to become more and more inward. I was a shell of a human by the time I left that role. I had no personality. I didn't have fun anymore. But my first telltale sign was about 9 months in, I started to get some eye twitching. And I thought, oh, I'm just tired, right? It's a clear sign of exhaustion is eye twitching. So I took a week off or something like that. And I'm like, that'll solve it. And I came back and 3 weeks later, my eye was still twitching, but I started having heart palpitations. And I didn't recognize it at the time that I was having heart palpitations. I just thought it was like a little flutter, maybe too much caffeine, but it was started to become very consistent. And I actually went to see my annual checkup, and my doctor listened to my heart rate and he's like, do you have these often? And it was at that moment I realized, oh, this is something not right. Right. And then about 3 months after that, when I finally left that job, I still had eye twitching. I still had heart palpitations. I now had developed a very strange rash. And what I came to the conclusion of was these were all signs that my body was giving me that I was in a situation that was not serving me. And by staying, all I was doing was staying because my ego didn't want to admit that I'd made a mistake, right? I loved the money and the what it provided for me and my family. And I had to really reevaluate, is my health and my body and my mental well-being worth what I'm getting paid? And then I had to recognize, well, if I just leave, am I not going to trust that the universe is closing a door to open another one? And I love my husband. When we talked about this, I was like, but it's so much money, right? Like, what are we going to do? We could last for a while, but not that long. And he's like, Brooke, when have we never not been taken care of? And it was that moment that I was like, you're absolutely right. This isn't worth it. I got to do something else. And so I just left. I had no plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. And 2 months later, the yoga studio I taught at, the owner wanted to know if I wanted to buy it. And I'm like, let's try. 9 months later, or a year later, after the pandemic kind of settled down after a few months, I found the perfect job with where I currently am a partner. And all of the things that I needed to check the box got checked because I gave space and time for the right thing to come. I didn't try to force it. And I do talk to a lot of women about this that are struggling with bosses or jobs that are breadwinners, a lot of regards, in their families. And it's really hard to walk away. I always ask them, what's your current relationship with money? Does it drive your decisions? And if the answer is yes, then you need to reevaluate your position with money. It should flow, right? It should be a resource that comes because you're doing the right things. And it shouldn't feel like a job and it shouldn't feel like a burden. And a lot of them are like, but you don't understand. I've got kids. And I'm like, yeah, but you're limiting your possibility because you think this is all you can do. But if you walk away and the next thing comes, it's the right thing for you, it's exponentially more, like more than you could ever think it could be. And we're at a point now where I'm like, I love it that the studio can self-sustain itself. I've got a great job that provides for what we need, and we can give back to the community stuff that we never thought we would be able to do, until much later in life. I'm like, it's happening now. And it's really just amazing to see how when you let go of this attachment to what you think it has to be, and you open yourself to possibilities, there's so much more, right? There's so much more.
Oh my gosh, so much that I want to unpack in what you said, and I hope people are taking notes because I know this is a topic that people can relate to. The first thing was you said, you left that first job, but you didn't do any of the healing yourself in that. So it almost felt like running away from this thing. And then it ended up following you to your next job through somebody else. And again, I don't think we take enough time to always do that. And we end up in the same patterns over and over and over again. And we can't figure out why we're attracting people like that or why these things continue to happen. And it's because we haven't done the inner work to truly let go. And that is one of the things that you said too, was just being able to let go. And that is a struggle to do. And it takes so much of those inner shifts to be able to do. And so I think, through things like yoga, meditation, working with a coach, whatever the thing is, like working on ourselves matters so much. And sometimes, and I like how you said, you talk with women about this too. As entrepreneurs, I think we really gravitate to that because like we're solo, like we're doing this. We have to have a community. We have to have healing. We have to have personal growth. But when we're not taking that path, sometimes it's harder to see the value in why does personal growth matter so much? Like that sounds like kind of like a nice to have cherry on top kind of thing, but it's not. Like those are the shifts that really make you who you are and allow you to see the possibilities. And that was the last thing that I really heard you say. And that was you had to make a very scary decision. And I don't think we're telling everyone to like go out and quit their jobs today.
No.
However, we do know internally what we need to do. And sometimes it scares us. So yeah, sometimes maybe it is quitting your job. Maybe it's cutting back your hours. Maybe it's, fill in the blank. But we know what we need to do next. And like you said, it hurts our ego. It scares us. It's all of those things. And a lot of times we have to take that leap of faith. I heard there's a expression somebody told me at work that has really stuck with me of like, sometimes you just have to step off the sidewalk and know that the ground is going to be there to catch you. Like, you took that leap of faith of saying, like, literally, this is probably killing me and I cannot stay here, but I don't know what is next. And you had to kind of take that scary step into the unknown. And that's another thing that many times I don't think we really realize, that first you have to make the space for whatever is coming for you to come, because otherwise it's going to continue to pass you by. I've had to do that a lot in the transition in my corporate career of like working 40 plus hours plus building a business that's only sustainable for so long, where then I had to be like, okay, what's the next step that feels scary enough? And I never totally felt ready. Any of the transitions I've made, I've never felt ready, but I knew it was the next scary step that I had to do. So I think, again, just so much gold in what you just said.
Well, and I think if it's not scary, it's probably not big enough, right? And I think that's what I kept coming back to with a few ladies I know that are struggling with things like this and the whole money topic. But I was like, what is the worst thing that could happen if another job comes along and takes your pay to 75% of what you make now? What if we call it a bridge job? And it's just there so that you create a container and space so you can heal. And you're not completely stepping away in a way that makes you feel like you're abandoning all of these things, but you're leaving the toxic part to the side. You're stepping into something you could do with your eyes closed, right? Just go do it. And then start to be intentional about what you want next. And I think that's, we talk a lot about that in yoga, is setting intentions. And I knew when I quit the last job, I had been planning for months on what I wanted to have happen next, right? Like that step happens, and then I'm just going to take the time and let everything that needs to come out. and we're just going to make this what it needs to be. But to your point, you have to create the space for it. Otherwise, when your cup is so full, what happens when you overfill a jar of water? It just keeps going, right? And everything spills out all over the place. But it's like, if you can create capacity and time, and you acknowledge there's some things I'm holding on to that aren't serving me anymore, and I let go of those, all of a sudden the things that need to fill the space and time start to magically appear.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not easy. I do want to sidetrack that. This is not easy.
Simple concept, not as easy to execute. It takes a lot of work for sure. I hope you're enjoying today's episode. I wanted to interrupt for a brief moment to let you know that I'm currently enrolling in one-on-one private coaching. If you are ready to go all in and see big results, this is for you. With my Transforming You option, we will spend 3 months together focused just on you. Working one-on-one in this capacity will skyrocket your growth beyond your wildest dreams. This is the deep inner work. We will dig into your goals, your dreams, the things that are holding you back, the things you didn't even know were holding you back. This is what will unlock that next level of you, whatever that might be. Maybe you want to step into that next promotion at work or grow your own business. Maybe you're longing for more balance between your career and your family. Or maybe you're unsure of what you're craving next and you want to find more clarity on your career and life direction. That's what we'll unpack together. No 2 sessions are alike. Plus, you'll have on-demand access to me throughout our entire time together. You will go through such a transformation as you step into the next era of you. This is the personal growth that takes years to accomplish on your own. So let's accelerate that and get you the results you're craving right now. Send me a message on Instagram or head to acrprofessionalcoaching.com to learn more. I'll also put the details in the show notes for you. Your road to dreamy success begins here. Now, back to the episode. I love that you mentioned even the bridge piece, because that's something that I say all the time too, of like, okay, this next step, like this is a bridge to the next thing. And even when I'm working with women who are, are wanting to make that scary career change or whatever, like there's so much pressure of like, okay, I have to have it all planned out. I have to know exactly all of the things. And this is the exact right job for me. And it's like, no, this is probably the next right move for right now. Who knows where that's going to lead you in the future. And especially when we are high income earners, you've got that added pressure of, okay, I can't mess up. I can't do this wrong. I can't stumble and fall. And it's finding the beauty in each one of those moments. And so I love that you talked about, that bridge position or that bridge job, or, I talk to a lot of women right now that are craving more space and time. Like they're like, I'm not actually looking to get to the next level in my career. Like I really want to, cut back on my hours or spend more time with my family. And, when we can do that inner work to really figure out what aligns with us, to be honest with you, like, and this, like the workforce is changing. So we can create whatever we want to create. You can have the family and the career and your passions, like all of those things are actually possible. It's just when we are so overfilled and, working so much, we can't even see that could be possible. So
just being authentic in what you want to do, I think is really critical, but also being unapologetic for creating boundaries around the things that you value and need. Because the workforce, we know this, they will take as much as you'll give.
Yes.
And more, right? And the minute you start to put boundaries, especially as women, I could go all day about this, especially as women. We're expected to do more than everybody else. You're given all the crap nobody wants to do. You go fix the problem. You go solve the issue. And when you start pushing back and saying, this isn't my monkey. We talk about this a lot in some of my development programs. Not my monkey, right? This is not my monkey. And you give it back to people. They're offended at first, but then they start to realize like, I can't dump on Amanda anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. And you create how people treat you and you hold them to it. And you don't ever compromise that. Otherwise, they'll take as much as you'll give.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're burned out and we're overwhelmed and we can't figure out, again, why that keeps happening or how that keeps happening, no matter what job we're at, no matter what level we're in. It all comes back to the inner work and, what is okay with me, and then people adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to talk about, you've mentioned the yoga studio. That's actually how you and I met, was through the yoga studio. And Buka Yoga was a sponsor for Unleashing You Live as well, which was amazing. Your contribution to the swag bag was a huge hit. So that is super exciting there. And I know you've learned a lot through being a business owner, but you do a lot of things. So I want to dig into, because I'm sure you get this question and I get it too, of like, how do you do it all? So you started mentioning around boundaries. Like, what are the things that you've put in place for yourself to be able to be a successful business owner, partner, fill in the blank?
I do get asked, most women are like, I don't know how you do everything. Well, one, I don't have children, so my life is a little less complicated. That does help, but that means that I have a lot more time to fill. And I'm really good at filling it. And so 2 years ago, I hit a point where I'm like, I'm really bad at asking for help, like really bad. And my husband of 20 years, like he's always asking, can I help you? Can I help you? No, I got it. And I finally was like, yes, I need you to do these things for me. And just by asking and letting go of needing to own it, it's made things at home like so much easier because there's a shared responsibility. I was really afraid to give up my control of the studio because of what all we went through with the pandemic and just being here still 5 years later. And I realized like social is a huge suck. Like being present on social media and staying connected to your community takes a lot of time. So I finally hired a studio manager, and she's fantastic. And she handles all the stuff for me, and it makes my world just so much easier. I'm really clear on the weekends. I don't have my phone around me or on between certain times. I put it on Do Not Disturb, and I honor that. And I'm really clear on Sundays in particular. I picked a day that it's all about self-care. And so that can look like whatever it needs to. I take a nap, I take a bath, I read a funny book, I watch a funny movie, or I just sit and do nothing. But I give myself space to have a day where I'm not scheduled. I don't need to be anywhere, and I can just rest and do the things that bring me joy. Are there anything that you do, Amanda, specifically?
I would say for me, I am really particular with my time now. Like I really value my time much more than I think I ever have. I do a lot of the things that you said, but to not repeat all the things that you mentioned too, I think maybe that's the one thing that I would add is our time is valuable too. And I think so often we prioritize everybody else over ourselves, or we don't want to say no to something or whatever the case is. And now I think I really realize like just how valuable that time is. So that way, when I am scheduled to be doing a certain thing, I can be all in on that because now I'm not resentful because I'm overscheduled or overcommitted. I was 100% the yes person, the people pleaser. Like, you invite me to something, I'm coming. Somebody wants to come to town. Yes, no problem. Like, I will work late. I will do all the things. And not to say that it's perfect because there are certain nights where I'm like sitting here at my desk and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you don't need to be doing this right now, but it's being able to, I think, catch those things a lot faster. And now I have the tools to be able to reroute myself almost when I feel myself falling into some of those old habits or some of those old patterns. One of the examples would be I was literally just talking with my coach and it's like, I'm feeling really scattered recently. Like I'm usually very focused and I'm like, I've got all these things going on, but I always have all these things going on. So I don't know what's different. And so we just broke it down of like, okay, what are the top 3 things you want to prioritize? Which is so funny because, when it's yourself, you just can't see that. Like you almost need somebody to be able to point that out.
You do.
And I said, you know what? I used to journal every single morning and I even have a guided journal. And that's one of the things is like, what's just the top 3 priorities for you today? And I was like, I've been falling back into old habits and going straight to my computer. And so it like just took that little light bulb of like, oh, okay, I've fallen out of the habit of that. Let me go back. And since that conversation, I've, not turned my computer on right away. I've not picked up my phone right away. Like I go straight to my journal. And it's small things like that again, when you show up for yourself in that way and you continue to prioritize yourself along with all the other things, it can absolutely make a huge difference.
And I sometimes will ask people, and I got asked this before I hired the studio manager. My husband was like, how much time do you spend on this stuff? And I did the math. And he said, how much would you charge a client for your time as a consultant? And I did the math and I was like, oh gosh. And he's like, yeah, do you get any of that return? I'm like, no, I don't. It's actually not worth my time to do this anymore. And if I could hire someone to do it that can do it just as well as I can and makes a decent amount of money off of it, why wouldn't I do that?
Right? Yeah. There's one thing in my corporate team, one of the things that we've always talked about, and if any of them are listening, because they listen to this podcast, they know exactly what I'm going to talk about. But we talk about like, what's the ROI of that meeting? When you've got 7 people in that meeting, do we all need to be in that meeting? Because if you add up all of our hourly rates, okay, like, are we making that much money off of whatever it is that we're talking about? And so I think that's a shift in the corporate world. And obviously when you own your own business, but even in our personal life. And I've talked about this on the podcast before too, of like, I used to get so angry when it was time to clean my house. Like when I had to like do deep cleaning of my house, like everyone would run because like I'd be so mad about it. And I kept being like, oh, I can't hire anyone because it doesn't fit in the budget. It doesn't fit in the budget. When one day I just sat down and I said, is this even worth it? Is it even worth it? All the time, the energy, the arguments that then it's going to cause, is that worth it to me? Or do I just figure out a way to work it into the budget? Of course, I worked it into the budget, have never looked back. It was never as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And I've gotten so much of my own time and energy back. So yeah, I think just looking at that return, whether it's work related or personal related, is like, can somebody else do this for me? And what gift will that give me back from there? I know I want to be mindful of time for you too. What final message would you leave for listeners who are hearing this and they're just really resonating with this conversation?
Yeah, so a couple things come to mind. And I've been talking a lot about this on retreats and in my yoga classes is we can and we should do hard things. Just because it looks easy for someone else to do it doesn't mean it is. And we should do the hard things because what's on the other side is just beautiful and amazing. Don't be afraid of it. Just do it. You said this earlier on, and I love it. It's one of the intentions I use all the time. Let go what's going and let come what's coming. Stop attaching to things that don't serve purpose or bring you joy. I'm talking a lot about joy right now. What brings you joy in your life? And it's these little things that we have to remember, but let it go. Don't hold on to it anymore. And remember the pause. That's my word this year is pause. And it's really all about, there's this beauty in, I would imagine if you think of a time that you were the happiest or most joyful, it might have been something that was completely unscheduled. It was just in the moment. And that's where we say life is lived in the pauses. So create more space for pause and really embrace what comes with that. And then the last one was do the big thing that you dream about doing now. Don't wait until you're 50 or 60 or 70 or retired. If it's in your heart to do it now, just do it. Because it may not be there in 10 more years. And you may not have the energy to do it in 10 more years. So do it now.
I feel like when you were talking, I was like, Brooke needs to write a book of like all of these quotes and put them all together. Each one of those, I feel like we could dig into if we had time to do.
Well, I have a book called Living Life with Intention, and it's a lot about these intentions that some of them we've talked about today. And it's a self-guided journal that it goes for a week. Yeah, each one's for a week, and it gives you some prompts, and it's just try to rewire the brain to be more mindful about things. And that's a whole nother story about the book, but it's out on Amazon if anybody wants it. It's just called Living Your Life with Intention.
We're going to have to dig into that. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So where can listeners find you if they'd like to connect?
For my personal or my corporate side, I'm on LinkedIn just under Brooke Page-Thompson. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook under Buka Yoga. It's Buka. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook on a personal page, just Brooke Page-Thompson. I'm also on Insight Timer, which is a free meditation app. I've got a bunch of pre-recorded yoga nidras that anyone can take anytime. So just look for Brooke Page-Thompson under the teachers, and a whole library of things will pop up that you can do at home.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much, Brooke. I know that you have inspired me, and I know that you have inspired others, and I'm just so grateful to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you'd like to continue this conversation, connect with me on Instagram and say hello. You can find me at AmandaRiffy_coaching. In the meantime, if you know you are ready to step into the next incredible version of you and want to completely accelerate your personal and professional growth, let's work together. I offer one-on-one private coaching as well as workshops and in-person events. There's really something for everyone. To learn more, visit my website at acrprofessionalcoaching.com or send me a DM on Instagram and start a conversation. And don't worry, I truly want all of us to succeed. So I promise I will never steer you wrong. Let's create a career and life you love. Chat with you again soon.